This is my friend Leslie Hudson Reynolds, and we got to spend the weekend together for our posture shift training, and we are very, very, very excited to have this conversation. And just because some of us know you, and some of us don't, Leslie, I'm wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what College Church has meant to you and what role it's played in your life.
Well, I would say that there are two different aspects of what I've learned from College Church. First of all, when I moved to Northampton, I was a stage manager for Broadway tours for about 15 years, and I was married to a woman. We lived right down the street on William Street, and she ended up passing away very unexpectedly. And she had been volunteering with the GAP program, and so this was the only church that I knew in the area. And God, in God's humor and wisdom, had me call this church and say, hey, will you do the funeral? Thinking, I'm in Northampton. Of course they're affirming. Everybody's affirming in Northampton, right? No, the one church that is not affirming in Northampton is where God decided to send us. But when I called and spoke to Steve, there wasn't a hesitation. It was an immediate, we would be honored to. There wasn't a question of, I need to speak to the elders, I need to talk to my largest donors, none of that. It was, we would be honored to. And I went in and had, the funeral planning meeting, and he was like, our deacons would love to provide you with a meal. And during the service, he referred to me as a widow and said that the church needed to come around me as a widow and love me as a widow. And I had had some pretty horrific church experiences prior to that. And so to hear those words coming from a pulpit was something that I never anticipated hearing. He made me promise that I would sit and wait until, for the first 4 weeks that I came, he invited me, he's like, just give us a chance for 4 weeks. And once I found out that this was not an affirming church, and I said, 4 weeks, I can lose an hour for 4 weeks, that's fine. So I came, and as you know, there's a lot of taking down and putting up of stuff on the stage, and there was a line to see, as there is, in any church, a line to see the pastor after the service. And I saw Doug Miller up here coiling cables, and I was like, do you want some help with that? Just trying to kill time to talk to Steve. And he was like, oh, there's a special way we do it. And I was like, yeah, pinch and twist. Do you want some help? And so, as anybody who's involved in church knows, once you figure out that somebody has tech knowledge, you get grabbed up pretty quickly. And at that time, we would have rehearsals were on Friday night. We would have a Bible study prior to worship rehearsal. Then we would worship, and then we would all go out and do something together. So I had this immediate community to see me through my grief. And so that was thing number one that I was taught. Thing number two would be post the not so fun times here. I've been back a few times and have been shown more grace and more love. And I felt that I owed the elder board at the time an apology, and wrote an apology letter to the elder board. It got the most gracious response back. And so this is definitely, it's my boss, Bill. I am so glad this weekend is over, I can't tell you, because my boss's name is Bill Henson, and this is Bill Hodgman. So we couldn't even say Bill H when we were trying to figure out who was doing what. So I love you, Bill, but I'm glad it's done. But just the graciousness that has been shown and the understanding of where I was. And I've even had people say, we know you, we knew you'd come around, we knew you would see what we saw. We just wanted to love you, and so that's why we gave you your space. So I've learned quite a bit from this church and the family that it's been to me over the last 13 years, even though I now live in East Tennessee, way away.
I'm so glad that's been your experience, and I'm so glad you stayed in touch. And so let's talk about what you're doing now, because you have a beautiful calling. Can you tell us the work that God's given you to do?
Sure. So I work for a group called Posture Shift. We have really 3 different aspects of what we do. Part of it is what happened here this weekend, where we train church leaders how to better love and be more inclusive of the LGBT community. We typically say queer community now, but then that gets people that's my age and older who are not familiar with that word really like uptight, because that was a slur for a very long time. But the younger generation has reclaimed that, so yeah, younger generation power. So we do that. We have a Guiding Families book that we've written. We're in the process of rewriting it because language evolves. We're now doing more on intersectionality. So what is it like to be, one of the articles that's going to be in it is, what is it like to be the Black lesbian daughter of a pastor? You know, which is, that intersection is something I'll never come to. And so we're really trying to focus on intersectionality. We've increased the trans section. And also within Guiding Families, we have what we call direct care. None of us are licensed counselors, but we do meet with parents one-on-one, either via Zoom or if they happen to be in our city that we're living in. We'll meet with them. There is a pay door to it, but we've never turned somebody away because they couldn't afford it. So that's also true with our book, Guiding Families. If somebody says, I just can't afford this, my kid just came out, I don't know what to do. Okay, here you go, express mailing it, fine. And then our third is our justice initiative, and we help kids who have been kicked out of their homes. So we've just recently, this past semester, finished paying for housing for someone in college because their parents had cut off their college fund. We contacted the college and said, hey, this happened. We'll pay for their housing if you can give them a scholarship for their tuition, to ensure that this young person was able to get their education. We hold to what we call a traditional sexual ethic, meaning one man, one woman for life. So we don't believe that being gay itself is a sin, or being trans itself is a sin. It's what you do with that. And I would say that we believe that the Bible is a lot more clear about LGB than it is T, and that we're all kind of wrestling with the T aspect of it. I'm the donor relations coordinator, so if you want to give us money, please come see me. I would love to take your money to continue our mission. And I also, they've given me the name gender identity expert, which I'm really not super comfortable with. But that's what we do. We literally have been all over the world now, thanks to people we were using Zoom long ago because we were located all across the country, but now as more and more people have gotten into the idea of Zoom, we've been to Australia, we've been to New Zealand, we've been able to do stuff in Amsterdam, and in the red light district in Amsterdam, like a church held a 2-hour posture shift. So it's really just opened up the whole world for us to be able to share that we're all, as the t-shirt I was wearing yesterday, we're all Imago Dei. We are all made in the image of God, and that's how we need to treat each other.
What do you wish that Christians knew about the LGBTQ community?
So the LGB, so meaning lesbian, gay, bisexual, I wish that Christians knew that just because someone says they're gay, that doesn't mean they're out having tons of gay sex. That is an identity. It's saying, this is who I'm attracted to. It tells you nothing about their action. If a young person comes out and says, Mom or Dad, I think I'm gay, that doesn't mean that they've slept with half of their school or that they've even held somebody's hand. It's just saying, I've noticed I'm attracted to someone of the same sex. And so I wish that, I think that we would be able to humanize people a lot more if we realized that that is an adjective and it's not an action. For trans, the list could go on and on. Making things like single-use bathrooms, if you have them, making those to where they're non-gendered so that it's not triggering dysphoria. Dysphoria, just so you know, is the pain that someone feels when their gender and their natal sex do not line up. And that can be anything from white noise to I literally cannot leave my room. So I just wish that people knew more about that. There are so many places online that you can go to look up vocabulary. I wish that people would search that out so that you're not saying homosexual because that automatically makes us think you're dangerous. Or a gay or the trans. You know, it's things like that that you can easily find online just by doing a Google search of LGBT vocabulary and stuff like that. That doing your part to educate, kind of like when, you know, during COVID, how we were all looking up all of this stuff so that we could be more sensitive to people of color. I wish people would do that with the LGBT or queer community. Yeah.
How can we pray for your work and for the people that you care for?
For the people that we care for, we see a large number of suicidal people. And there have been times when I've been literally sitting in the library at my church talking to a trans person and saying, okay, we have three options. I either have to call 911, your mom has to take you to the emergency room, or I have to take you to the emergency room, because they had three different plans of how they were going to kill themselves. And so there's a lot of pressure there. And I identify as gay and trans, non-binary, and I have socially transitioned, really. So it's difficult, how you can pray for me, it's difficult to sit across from someone who is feeling the same things that I feel. I'm much further down the road. I have an amazing counselor that I can unload all of this stuff on, who understands the queer community. But that's how you can be praying for me specifically, is just that I'm able to effectively help these young people not experience what I experienced as a child in the church. I was literally escorted out of a church at one point. So that's what we're trying to do. And as a ministry, just that we're able to have the wisdom to reach the people that we need to reach, and the wisdom to spend the money where it needs to be spent, and to Q&As during our posture shifts can be anything, and we try to answer every question very graciously, even though it may be incredibly hurtful at the time. And so we have to kind of push that back. And once again, that's why I'm very thankful for Sean, my therapist. He's amazing.
Thank you for sharing a bit with us. And I know that you want to be available after the service. If
Absolutely.
there's a young person or a parent or